world. Welcome to this extraordinary patient engagement open forum session today on Thursday, November 20th. It's entitled Join the Conversation, Shaping EMA's Vision for Patient Engagement and Patient Experience Data Together. And just for a moment, I'd like you to imagine that we're actually meeting looks like if patient experience data were fully integrated into every regulatory decision. What would have changed for patients, for developers, and for regulators? And today is part of envisioning and shaping that future. What makes this moment truly unique and special is that as part of this dialogue, as part of this conversation, we have regulators, we have patient leaders, and we have industry all in the same space and co-shaping that vision together. And your voice, all of you out in the audience around the world, wherever you're joining us from, regardless of your level of experience, but with patient engagement or patient experience data, it's essential that we hear from all of you in helping to evolve this landscape and how we continue this conversation together. And with that, then, I'm joined today by a wonderful panel, Nicole, Rosa, and Rebecca. And we're just going to take a few minutes now to introduce each of the speakers, each of the panelists. And if I can turn to you, Nicole, first to introduce yourself and also maybe share one or two thoughts in terms of what success would look like for you if patient experience data and patient engagement were fully integrated into regulatory decision-making. Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Haley. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here this afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be invited to be part of this discussion on patient experience data. My name is Nicole, and I work at Parkinson's UK. I head up our patient engagement program here. I've been here for about 4.5 years. We're based in west side of London. And this is an area that's been exciting our staff members for the last few years, alongside other patient organizations in the Parkinson's space. And I think for us, in terms of success in this space, I think we'd like to see patient experience data fully embedded in the regulatory process from start to finish. And I think we'd also love to see companies coming to us early on in the process, at the start of the medicine's development process, so we can help them design meaningful studies that truly reflect the needs and experiences of people with Parkinson's, because in the past we've had some experience where it can be a rushed process where patient experience data is being dealt with. So we just love to see best quality data being produced, and we're happy to help in that space. That's my initial thoughts, Haley.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for your insights there, and great to have you on the panel discussion today as well. Rosa, if I can turn to you next, please.
Thank you, Haley. Good afternoon to everyone. A pleasure to be here today. My name is Rosa. I work at the Public and Stakeholder Engagement Department at EMA, where I've worked for the past 15 years. I support strategic projects on regulatory science, and I coordinate the work on patient experience data within the agency. And what we would like to see are more medicines approved on outcomes that are the most relevant for patients. And for this, what we would like to see are more developers and patient groups developing and working on patient experience data, liaising early with us, and this translating into more regulatory submissions to the agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Pleasure to have you with us today, and look forward to hearing from you a little bit later in the conversation as well. And Rebecca, if we can hear from you too, please.
Hi, Haley and everyone. I'm so pleased and delighted to be here with you today. It is an absolute honor. I'm Rebecca Vermeulen. I lead the Global Patient Network as a team within Roche Pharmaceuticals, and working very hard to ensure that the patient perspective is integrated into decisions that we're taking as a company. And to your question, a very important question, in the future, what would that look like? For me, it would just be a seamless process where a normal way of working is integrated as a part of our business, as a common core expectation of what's included as a part of our submission process. And I think in doing that, the questions that would be fostered would be, what does this new treatment mean for patients? As the very first questions on the outcomes that matter to them as we evaluate the new science. So not just what's this new science, but what does it really matter for patients?
Thank you, Rebecca. It's wonderful to have all three of you as part of this panel discussion, and we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into many of the key points that each of you raised in the introductions. And when we look at our goals for today and our objectives for today, you can see very clearly that one of the key priorities is to have this collaborative dialogue, to hear from different perspectives, to hear from different communities. We want to share a little bit in terms of progress and gaps. How are we advancing, and how is there an evolving consideration for patient experience data? We want to make sure that as part of this session that we are listening and hearing to what each of you have to say and how we can bring forward a consolidated response as part of the open consultation that the EMA has provided as it relates to their reflection paper on patient experience data. We'll hear more about that in just a few moments as well. And then finally, we'll look to see how can we absolutely consider further opportunities where we can look at actionable ways to improve the embedment of patient experience data and also patient engagement activities to ensure that we are really listening to what is most important to the patients, as each of our panelists has described. The way we'll look at doing this is a few presentations for the first couple of minutes here, the first 15 minutes or so. We'll have an opportunity for a brief Q&A, and then, as is true to the PEOF form, we'll absolutely have an opportunity for co-creation. We really want to hear from each of you to contribute to your insights and your perspectives. And then finally, we'll regroup and have a few minutes for key conclusions and takeaways as well. So with that in mind, we also want to understand who you are and what your experiences are related to patient engagement and patient experience data. So if I could kindly ask each of our attendees, looking across the group here today, if you could quickly join on to Slido and answer the question here in terms of how extensive is your experience with patient engagement? Is it foundational in terms of limited or no experience with patient engagement activities and you're unfamiliar with that? Is it intermediate in terms of, okay, we've had some regular participation or regular activities related to patient engagement activities? Or is it more advanced, where you really feel very comfortable with this and thinking through very clearly and understanding in terms of what patient engagement activities are actually referring to? If you could take a moment to answer that, and then we'll show the results. All right. And so we're seeing a very strong contingent here of people that are very familiar and have advanced patient engagement expertise. Terrific. Let's move on to the next slide then. Just a similar type of question, but now instead of patient engagement, thinking about patient experience data. So again, would you consider yourself sort of this is a new area for you, or you have limited experience in this area with patient experience data, more intermediate, where you've maybe participated in patient experience data studies, a moderate level of understanding, or something that's more advanced? And again, if we can take a moment to answer that. And intermediate. Fabulous. So I can see we're going to have lots of insights generated here, some really great discussion with the community that has strong expertise as it relates to patient engagement, and also some good insights for patient experience data as well. If you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I'm one of those people that has neither, that's okay. This is a home for you as well too, and we absolutely welcome your insights. Sometimes a fresh perspective or a different perspective is exactly what we need to spark a new way of thinking or a new consideration. So please don't let this Slido scare you off at all. But you can see clearly from the Slido that we have interest here, and this is an area that certainly for PFMD and for many of the organizations that are on the call today, that we have been working in this space for some time and collaborating and really thinking through what are some of the challenges, what are some of the issues as it relates to patient engagement and patient experience data. Some of you may have had an opportunity to experience some of these challenges, and they range in things like the lack of clarity, the lack of structure. What exactly are we talking about when we speak about patient experience data? Maybe some of you are from patient organizations where you're tired of getting requests for information from your community to help support industry because you're getting multiple requests from company A, and then a few months later, maybe from company B or from company C. So real duplication of effort. And then in terms of thinking about from a regulatory perspective, then we've also heard from our community some of the lack of guidance, the lack of transparency. There's uncertainty around what exactly is expected and what's needed. Maybe some inconsistency again, whether that be between regulatory agencies around the world or even within one agency, and the difference between those individuals and departments that are setting policies and those that are actually doing the reviewing. And then finally, as we look to early development and thinking about the integration of patient experience data, how early is early enough? And what does that mean? What does that look like? So clearly there's a number of challenges that we are looking to be able to provide some insights and further direction on through this collaborative approach. But at the same time, while we're seeing these challenges, we're also seeing a lot of interest and a lot of consideration for patient engagement and patient experience data around the world. And this slide just highlights some of the activities from various regulatory and HTA agencies around looking at patient experience data and patient engagement. New guidances, new proposals. Certainly in the top right corner there, you'll see very clearly indicated the focus of today's discussion around the EMA's reflection paper as well. And seeing these also suggests as well that when we look at a publication that we put out earlier in the year, and you can see the link there. My apologies, I've skipped too quickly to the next slide. So I'm going to back up for a minute because this is absolutely an important slide to reference as well too, which is actually looking at from a regulatory perspective, specifically with the FDA, thinking about where were there opportunities for patient experience data to be reported on, what was captured from the FDA perspective. And you can see there very clearly that there's about 45% in terms of the new molecular entities that received looking at the patient experience data, and then also thinking about how are there opportunities there for patient experience data to be integrated into the benefit risk framework and also into the product label so that we know that patient experience data is important and it's being very much integrated. Similarly, this is the slide that I was moving to before, was thinking about when we look across the landscape, across opportunities to see where things are happening around the world. We conducted a landscape analysis to be able to draw from the different experiences of different regulatory and HTA agencies to see what's publicly available. How much consideration is there actually being given to PE, patient engagement, and PED, patient experience data? And on the next slide then, I just want to highlight a really important factor here is that we talk about patient engagement, we talk about patient experience data. What's also vital and really important to this too is how patient engagement and patient experience data need to be very much intertwined. Patients need to be involved in the design, the generation, the analysis, the better understanding of the data, and the dissemination of the data. So that integration of patient engagement and patient experience data is so important. On the next slide, when we go back to that landscape analysis, what you'll see then is from the analysis itself is that we found, again, looking globally at the regulatory and HTA bodies, is that about 75% of the resources were focused on patient engagement. About 46% of them were focused on patient experience data, and that combined integration of patient engagement and patient experience data was around 30%. And we might look at that and think, okay, not bad, not great, room for improvement. But I think what's really important is this was the second landscape analysis that we did. In the first year that we did it, and if we click through, thank you, you'll see the red bars are from the first year we did the landscape analysis, the green bars from the most recent publication. And what you can see is that there are more resources coming through on patient engagement. And more importantly, it's that integration of patient engagement and patient experience data that has been so important to see as well too. And so really thinking about how regulatory agencies are moving forward with that. Most recently, again, as we quickly look to the next slide, many of you may have participated in the FDA workshop in mid-September, where there was a strong focus on really focusing on measuring with the outcomes that really reflect what truly matters to patients and how that can be integrated into the product development and into the regulatory approval. Similarly, and again, as we will talk about in much more detail now with the EMA, with the reflection paper, it was not only in terms of early engagement, but also recognizing that PED should be systematically considered for informing the development at the earliest stages, and that all of this is part of the totality of evidence. So a really important point that we're at with the FDA and the EMA. Referencing the reflection paper on the next slide, very briefly, for those of you that may not be familiar with this, but certainly this is the focus of our discussion today, is that the EMA obviously has put forward this reflection paper on patient experience data with several months for open consultation. It's a framework for discussion, and it's really looking at the principles for using patient experience data at various different stages. As part of the preparation for this particular PEOF session, and then certainly thinking about how we are going to consolidate responses from the community, we sent out a survey to a number of our community and had a number of responses that I think it's interesting just as a sort of a sneak peek to be able to reflect on. One of the questions was, how clearly does the language in the EMA's reflection paper reinforce the importance of prioritizing PED in medicine's development? Well, over 50% felt very clearly, great. 39% somewhat, and 4% minimally. So again, a relatively smallish sample size, but an indication that there's still some work or some clarification that's required. Similarly, you can see on the next slide when we focus more specifically on patient engagement, do you think the reflection paper adequately emphasizes the integration of patient engagement into patient experience data activities? The number there is quite significantly lower. 26% felt yes, that there was sufficient focus there on patient engagement, 44% saying no, and 30% saying unsure. So we're hoping that we are, as part of this open dialogue and this discussion, providing a platform here to explore this further. What does this mean for each of you, for your organizations, and what would you like to see different or changed within the EMA reflection paper? But before we get to that co-creation piece, I would like to turn the floor over to Rosa now to share a little bit more about the EMA reflection paper and the serious consideration that went into this. I know, Rosa, that it's been in the works for some time, and I really want to applaud the EMA, you, Juan Garcia, of course, and the other team members and all of the committees that have taken the time to really put substantial thinking and consideration into this, and for allowing the community a considerable amount of time to provide feedback and input into that. But with that, I'll change it over to you, Rosa. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Hayley. And I would like to first of all thank all the organizers for arranging this wonderful workshop with so many participants, because I think it will be very, very good for us to hear the discussion. Next slide, please. I'm going to provide you hopefully a very brief overview and background to the reflection paper. Next one, please. Next. So before I, next one, please. Sorry, there were so many intro slides. Before I start talking about the reflection, next one, please. The reflection paper as such. Next one. I wanted to mention briefly how EMA has been engaging patients in its regulatory work. It really started when the agency started its operation 30 years ago. And already from that point in time, we have been involving patients, but obviously this discipline, or as I like to think about this, an emerging or a scientific discipline as such, it has been evolving with time. Here, I'm not intending for you to read all these acronyms and details, but really get this idea that patients have been involved and are currently involved along the life cycle of a medicine. So really from early research and development stages, we do involve them in our work, for example, for orphan medicines designation, for scientific advice, for discussing the pediatric development plans. And then later when the applications are sent to us and are evaluated, there's an opportunity there for the patient voice to input, and as well as in the post-authorization phase. Next slide, please. So what do we understand as patient experience data? This for us was a very, very critical thing to define because there are different views and definitions. And what we have proposed in our draft reflection paper is that these are data that reflect directly the patient experience without input or interpretation by any third party. So no interpretation by a clinician, really how patients really reflect their outcomes, what are their preferences, etc. And here we're talking about quantitative but also qualitative type of data. And of course, patient-reported outcomes are well known, same as patient preference studies, but we include in our definition data that come from patient engagement activities. And why are patient experience data important? Well, I'm sure within this audience, everyone is well familiar, but patients are the end of users of medicines. They're experts in their condition, in their disease, and really sometimes they provide unique insights that cannot be fully experienced by others. So we think at the agency that patient experience data, or PD, can really help us ensure that more patient relevant outcomes, ultimately to make sure that patients' needs are really met. And Haley already mentioned it, that our position is really that we welcome obviously high quality patient experience data as part of the totality of evidence, so really to support and enhance the assessments and our scientific recommendations. Next slide, please. So we think they can contribute in many ways, and in the draft reflection paper, we have elaborated more on examples where we see they could contribute, of course, during drug development, but also the regulatory process. And even we mention beyond during the assessment by health technology assessment bodies, and also to guide clinical practice. And here we have some examples like selection of endpoints during trial design, but also to inform about risk acceptability or patient preference, for example, for risk minimization measures, etc. Next slide, please. So I want to now mention briefly where the reflection paper comes from. In late 2022, we held a multi-stakeholder workshop at the agency to really start progressing on this topic and on this area within the EU, because this has always been an area of strategic importance, but obviously the agency underwent a relocation, and then COVID came, so things were a bit put on hold. But finally, as soon as we could devote sufficient resources to this, we said, well, it's time now to really start working on that. And from that workshop, we heard our stakeholders and really what the needs and challenges were. And obviously, there was a request for more regulatory guidance. And our position was, well, we don't have enough regulatory experience so far on this area to put, a clear or very detailed methodological guidance, but at least we can formulate a framework, our key principles, and make sure that it is clear for stakeholders how do EU regulators view patient experience data, what are the types, the sources, where we see a potential use, and then how can we support as regulators, developers, and other groups of stakeholders interested in collecting and submitting this type of data. So we decided we'll put first a reflection paper. It has been a long way because as you're aware, the agency works with a number of committees and expert groups from the EU regulatory network. And we had to put together a multidisciplinary group of experts that could provide the vision from all sides, but also we wanted to make sure that all our assessors from the different committees are on board. And that's why it's taken a little bit longer. So we have obviously the committee members from the CHMPs, the Committee for Human Medicines, the risk and the Pharmacovigilance and Risk Assessment Committee, the Orphans, Pediatrics, Advanced Therapies, but also our dedicated working parties. So some therapeutic areas specific like oncology, which have more experience in this area, methodology, scientific advice. And then we also had representatives from organizations of patients, consumers, and healthcare professionals who are part of our network, and more specific and dedicated groups within the agency. And they have all provided input. I was tasked with drafting the paper on the base of the expertise and content provided by experts within all these groups. Next slide, please. So to clarify a bit the scope, well, as mentioned earlier, it is really a framework for discussion because we still don't have enough regulatory experience in this evolving field. It is not methodological guidance, but we still think it's useful, and hopefully you find it too, or can help us make it more relevant for you. And it is complementary to work that's going on at ICH. Currently, they're working on guidance, harmonizing guidance on patient preference studies. For us, it's very important to call stakeholders to consider systematic consideration of this type of data when planning medicines development and regulatory submissions. And you have the link on this slide for those of you who might not have read the paper yet. Next slide, please. These are a bit the elements. So what's very important for us is to show what's the EU regulatory approach, how we value this data, what support mechanisms there are. We touch upon use and value, the types of PD, and the settings where this can be collected, because here we're not only talking about clinical trials, but also post-marketing. For example, this would also include real-world data, including from safety surveillance systems. And then at the end, we refer to some considerations for achieving systematic implementation. Next slide, please. In this slide, we've summarized the main support mechanisms that we offer developers and other groups who want to submit this data to us. So for academic and not-for-profit entities who are at a very early stage, just reflecting potentially on methods or how to collect this data. We offer academia briefing meetings. For developers who want to have an early dialogue on innovative methods, we have the Innovation Task Force. And then the main mechanisms that we have when development is a bit more advanced and focused on specific products, we have the platform of scientific advice or qualification of novel methodology if that's if you're developing a specific method to deal with PD. Next slide, please. With regard to patient engagement, as I mentioned earlier, we do see data from patient engagement activities as a type of PD. And this, of course, may be considered less established way of collecting PD when compared, for example, with PROs or with patient preference studies. But we think that it can be an important contributor. And for example, a understand
Rosa?
all the
Oh,
yes.
there we go. Apologies. I don't know if it was just me, but the sound cut out there for a moment, just in the last 1 minute or so, but you're back.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I'll take continue where I was, that referring to how we understand patient engagement, which are the interactions with patients to gather their experiences, their perspectives on the disease or on the treatment, and all their preferences and really their lived experience. And here we could be using a variety of methodologies, from a written consultation to survey. And then, of course, within EMA, we have developed our own types of methodologies, for example, public hearings or CHMP early contact. All is described in the paper. And of course, industry has also their well-established methods. So all this could help us gather the patient input. And what we do with this, we of course, when we evaluate medicines, we consider this data. So all the data submitted by the company, and then after our assessors evaluate that, the outcome of the scientific assessment is reflected in what we call the assessment report. And as Haley mentioned, we have been recently also improving the template so that we have now dedicated sections that report what type of patient experience data we have received in a submission, and then how the agency is considering this data and whether they contribute or not to the benefit risk assessment, and potentially for the inclusion in the product information, the EU label. Next slide, please. Regarding what I mentioned, the considerations for implementation, at the workshop in 2022 and throughout this period discussing with stakeholders, we've become aware and we've listened to them and understood that there are many challenges to make this systematic implementation a reality. So although we are not providing methodological guidance, we thought we'd still want to put a chapter in this paper where we tell stakeholders what appears as an important consideration to be taken into account, like data quality, representativeness, how we design studies, the data collection methods. Then there are specific challenges on PROs, and there, of course, there are operational challenges that are important for example, for patients, like the burden, the training, the language, etc. Here I also want to mention the global alignment on PD because we're within a global forum, which we very much appreciate, and we see a value of supporting global development to make sure that inclusion of PD becomes, systematically becomes a reality. Next slide, please. So here are a bit the timelines for our reflection paper. The consultation is open now until end of January. We'll be working on implementing comments. We'll of course bring this to our expert groups and our scientific committees, who are finally the ones who adopt the text. And then we hope to publish the final paper by Q2 2026. Next slide, please. So here is a bit the conclusions that we have. The consultation is open. We welcome very much your feedback on it, all your contributions. Whichever aspects you want to mention, we will look carefully comment by comment and we'll think whether and how we can implement that. We hope it is relevant for you. And but yeah, if there are questions on content, on structure, please get back to us. The agency considers that PD can be very valuable in forming medicine development and also regulatory submissions and our decisions on benefit risk, as well, obviously, on the post-marketing setting, not only pre-marketing. And yeah, we repeat this call that we encourage stakeholders to gather this data and include it in applications for marketing, and please liaise with regulators as soon as possible when you are thinking about using this type of data for your submissions. I think that's all for me. I don't know if there will be questions, but I'll be happy to discuss anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Really appreciate you walking us through the thinking, the strong considerations around patient engagement, patient experience data. And I can see that from some of the comments in the chat, certainly there's a few questions, but also really important, I think, to hear from our other panelists as well, too. Certainly, Nicole and Rebecca, as you've had an opportunity to review the EMA reflection paper, and certainly as you listen to Rosa and the preparation we've had for this session, Nicole, if I can start with you, I'm really interested to hear from your perspective, certainly the patient community, patient organization, as you reflect on the paper, how do you feel that it's helping to advance the integration of patient experience data? And specifically from a patient organization perspective, would be really keen to hear your thoughts on that, please.
Thanks, Haley. And yeah, thanks, Rosa, for such a clear presentation. I actually really enjoyed reading the EMA paper, which is, for a 17 to 19-page document, is not always the easiest thing to say. But I thought it was very clear. And I think it's a really important step, as it sort of clearly lays out some of the challenges that we're facing when it comes to collecting patient experience data, especially from a patient organization perspective. And I think it also was great to see the EMA acknowledging the gaps. And from our perspective, I would say that with the sort of the lack of clear guidance at the moment, the need for better methodologies to collect high quality data, as it's put in the paper, and the fact that patient experience data at the moment isn't being consistently collected sort of across the field. But I think from the EMA's paper, it's loud and clear that patient experience data is important. And I think this kind of messaging, especially from a regulator, sends a strong signal to drug developers that they need to take this seriously. And also they need to come to patient organizations nice and early in order to ensure that good quality patient experience data is collected, which has not always been the experience from our perspective and other patient organizations within the Parkinson's space. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there were a couple of comments in the chat too, thinking about the role of patient organizations and the very important role that they play in terms of contributing and understanding what is most important to the patient community as well. Rebecca, I'd like to turn things to you as well too. I'd like to understand from your perspective, as you have reviewed the paper, listened to Rosa, certainly from an industry perspective, from Roche's perspective, how do you see that this paper is helping to advance the integration of patient experience data into the regulatory and the review process?
I am really pleased to see this reflection paper come to life. I have to acknowledge, I think that what this really emphasizes is that the input from patient community really can help ensure that measures of success and endpoints that we choose to reflect meaningful improvement for patients and caregivers is recognized, because while we as a patient partnership function recognize that, it's not always recognized by other key functions within the organization. And so The EMA's position as a part of this reflection paper really clearly states how important it is to do this by clarifying the value of patient experience data, and I would say patient engagement as a part of that process. In order to do patient experience data and creating that, it requires active patient engagement as a part of this process, to the comments that were in the chats about how we work with patient communities. And so I think what really excites me, given my role at Roche, is that this reflection paper really helps acknowledge the role of the patient community and empowers the patient community to generate and collect patient experience data to provide really comprehensive, patient-centered view of a disease and the treatments that are needed to enhance and deepen their voice as a part of the regulatory decision-making process. So I think the paper does a wonderful job reinforcing the value, the patient value in new medicine development, and the fact that it's not a nice to have, but it's a need to have as a part of the process. And I'm just so pleased that PFMD and others are really leaning into this conversation to help support this dialogue.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think that's been certainly ongoing discussions within PFMD and the broader patient engagement community as well, to really think about what that means for patient organizations, for industry. It's one thing to sit in the department or in the seat of a patient engagement director, manager, but it's another thing then to absolutely connect the dots across the organization and to ensure that they also appreciate the value. And so having this reflection paper that, as you said, really I think as close as could be in terms of highly recommends that patient experience data is a big part of what is being submitted to regulators, and specifically here in this case, the EMA. Thank you, Nicole and Rebecca, for reflecting on certainly the positive movement of this. Perhaps we can just flip the coin now on the other side to say, great work to date, great work in terms of putting the reflection paper out, but what's missing? What's not captured there? What would you have liked to have seen? Are there specific areas that you think, not clear on this? Maybe we need to dig a little bit deeper into this aspect of it. Nicole, I'll come back to you first of all, and then Rebecca, please.
Very happy to, Haley. I can speak from our perspective. I was reflecting yesterday in terms of how many industry partners we've supported in 2025, and we've supported around 13 or 14 companies on probably around 20 clinical trials. Some of those were submissions to the MHRA and other regulators, and through that experience that we've gained, I thought there was 4 key barriers that we're facing as a patient organization at the moment in this space. So one, which we've already, which is the guidance, the issue of lack of clear guidance for both patient organizations and actually companies. So when we're actually working with companies, I've even seen from their perspective that there's a bit of confusion in terms of how best to collect data. So that's one of the issues, I think, at the moment. The other barrier that we have as patient organizations is companies come to us too late in the process, very, very close to submissions as a last minute request. So we can't work with them in order to produce the highest quality questionnaire, survey, focus group, whichever way they want to work with it. And sometimes the smaller companies are not so aware of the Parkinson's disease, which I find quite surprising this year, that they're developing a new medication, but they don't actually know the disease very well, and hence they don't know how to ask the questions to our community. So that takes time to work on it. The third one, I think you've already mentioned, Haley, around there's a lot of duplication. So we have different companies asking us similar questions, other patient organizations are asking similar questions, and we're not aware of what Cure Parkinson's Foundation, Michael J. Fox have been asked. And so there's a bit of a disconnect there. And the final area is potentially the cultural issue, which I'm not sure if it still exists, but historically clinical data has been prioritized over patient insights, and whether companies see patient experience data as essential. And from our experience on certain companies, because of the last minute request, we're feeling as though they don't feel it's a bit tokenistic and they just want to add it into their MHRA application. So I would say those are the four key barriers from our perspective as a patient organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. I think all very important. And certainly, I think in terms of the guidance, the timing, the duplication of effort, from the perception as to the value of patient experience data, some work to be able to progress some of the conversations and some of the thinking around that as well. Rebecca, how about from your side and from the reflection of an industry perspective in terms of this reflection paper? And I will ask you to respond, and then Rosa, I'd love to hear your feedback, your thoughts on based on what Nicole and Rebecca have shared as well too, please. So Rebecca.
Yeah, absolutely. I just really want to acknowledge Nicole's statement, excuse me, as it relates to early engagement as we partner with patient communities. I think certainly the reflection paper is a wonderful start towards initiating meaningful discussions around patient experience data. And there will always be a desire for more to ensure that we can create consensus. And so having guidelines and guidances to help in establishing that consensus on the adequacy, the methodologies. While it's very clear this is not a reflection paper, it's not about the methods, but I think understanding the evidence standards that are required for regulatory acceptance are important. And, having will help us level set across our stakeholders within the company what good looks like so that we can ensure consistency as well as elevate patient experience data as a relevant contributor. We were just talking about the importance and impact of clinical data. We need to be able to elevate and recognize the importance of patient experience data in the totality of evidence and create expectation that patient experience data is to be thoughtfully considered as a part of medicine's development and our own evidence generation activities to be sure this is included early as a part of that engagement. And so also I would just say that while we appreciate that the reflection paper does open the door for engagement via scientific advice meetings, really to be able to leverage these forums effectively, again, needing more about understanding of the guidance, the type and depth of information we should be bringing to the table to ensure that we're having a robust discussion and really encouraging EMA to review its process around these meetings to ensure that patient experience data is considered in an adequate time frame and is given a really robust discussion so that we can continue to learn and iterate. And just as you've reflected, Haley, I think we have recognized as a part of our PEPS community for the industry professional society that has been established, the need to work together to help collaborate and provide input and reflections back to this reflection paper as well, so that we can come together as an industry, as a part of PEPS, to be able to reflect a consistent view. And I think and hope that that will also help in our partnership with patient communities to avoid and reduce some of the duplication that we're hearing about as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca, for the insights there, certainly from the industry perspective. And I hope as you were sharing those thoughts, perhaps, Rosa, you would like to take a moment to respond or to provide some additional context, either in terms of what Nicole has shared or what Rebecca have shared as well, too.
Yes, thank you. No, I would like to say that we're well aware that the reflection paper is not going to change magically the situation. And as you said, it's opening the door. We thought, well, it goes beyond a declaration of intention because we really want to see this type of data in more submissions. And we have a small but a very dedicated team dealing with patient engagement at the agency, for example, handling when companies come for scientific advice and they bring a patient expert to input into the specific the specific medicine under discussion. But we know the paper won't change everything, it's not going to address all the challenges. And of course, we are well aware also that we have our assessors who are evaluating submissions based on data and is the totality of the package. So again, here is now my personal view, but if all the clinical trials have failed, we cannot expect that maybe a few patient experiences are going to turn around that decision. We all need to be very realistic about how the field is going to evolve and what is possible as of today. But again, we want to have more experience. We really value the patient voice, and the agency will look very carefully, even if you submit your own comments or third-party interventions. Every patient input is considered very carefully, especially when we're talking about product evaluation. We still think the reflection paper makes a difference because we've put it on paper. For example, the question of what is high quality data, we still provide a link to the EU data quality framework. If you read through the considerations, we still provide links to, or we think we provide links to some relevant clues. For example, the issue of missing data, which often is why you cannot then see some patient experience data reflected in the product information. So we hope that slowly but surely provides a few clues to what is important to then, when you are a developer considering carrying out a study that results in patient experience data, come and discuss with us, with our assessors, of course, within the context of your specific development plan. Come and discuss that with us early enough so that then this can be integrated into the trial or into the early development plan. But yeah, we need to stay realistic. So I think it's a big step. It's not an easy field. I personally see this as a really evolving scientific discipline. And at the end of the day, and we are all patients ourselves in a way. We know that our lived experiences can be a bit subjective, can vary from patient to patient. How do we make sure that this is all representative and as scientific as possible? Well, we have a lot of work to do here. What I would like to hear from you within the public consultation is, apart from what the reflection paper is covering, we might not be able, of course, to accommodate all the ideas, and solve all the problems. But, we also want to think about the work beyond the paper. What next after we have published this paper? So if you have ideas of how regulators can better support the patient community, the challenges you see that maybe we have not considered, how we can better support developers, let us know through the consultation, because that's something we'll also look carefully. How are we going to shape our next steps, working on this area? Thank you, Hayley, and all, and I hope this was useful.
Yes, of course, Rosa. Thank you. Thank you for your reflection on the reflection paper. Very important to hear. And I think where I can see in the chat, there is a lot of questions. There's a lot of discussion. One of the questions that might be, I'm hoping relatively straightforward, but a question that's come forward for you, Rosa, specifically is, you outlined very clearly in the reflection paper a number of the different councils and committees that were consulted to bring this paper forward. And I know when I read through it, I was amazed at the list of the different perspectives that have really been brought into this from the EMA, which I think is certainly to be commended. In the effort to think about harmonizing and streamlining, you referenced, for example, ICH. and thinking about how do we make sure that the guidances or the information is aligned globally. But also there's that integration between regulatory bodies and HTA and payers. And so there's been a couple of questions about, in terms of the reflection paper from a regulatory perspective, was there consultation with HTA bodies, health technology assessment bodies as well to help inform this, or are there plans to be able to think through that?
Yes, thank you, Hayley, for this question, because it's really very, very important. And the lack of alignment sometimes between regulators and downstream players was highlighted as a challenge at the workshop in 2022. So, of course, the paper is written more from the development and regulatory decision making at the EMA level, but that's why we thought we really need to still mention here how important it is that there's this alignment with payers, with HTA bodies. So to respond directly to your question, we did send it to a few of our contacts within the HTA network at early draft stage. And that's a discussion channel that we have open. And of course, we do expect that they will be inputting into the public consultation formally. So they're very relevant. It's a very relevant stakeholder group for us to make sure that the PED field really achieves progress. They need to be part of an integral discussion. Is really a key stakeholder. And I would like to also highlight that within the reflection paper, we refer to the to this support framework we have, which is scientific advice in parallel with HTA bodies, because that's something that developers can also come to discuss with us, having some representatives from HTA bodies within the scientific advice, and that will hopefully help align the requirements and make sure they're, whatever PD are collected are useful not only for regulators, but also for downstream decision makers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rosa. And I think that is a key theme, certainly not only in terms of the connecting between what's happening globally, but also between the ways that patient experience data is being used for healthcare decision making and ensuring that we can streamline that process. And that's exactly what this conversation is all about, is ensuring that we're hearing both sides, multiple sides of the same discussion around the importance of patient experience data and thinking about what is most meaningful and important to the patient community as a starting point. That's where these discussions should begin. I'd love to continue this Q&A for another hour, but I know while it's been very interactive for the four of us, I know that our attendees are also anxious to contribute, certainly from what I've seen in the chat as well too. And so this is your time now to really co-create with us, provide your insights, provide your perspectives. As I mentioned right up front, if you're feeling like, oh, I'm not sure I have anything to contribute, you do. You absolutely do. We want to hear the perspectives globally, regionally, across different stakeholder groups as well. The objective behind this activity, which I'll get into in just a moment, is obviously to explore the different perceptions that from different stakeholder perspectives the reflection paper has tackled. How do you feel about that? Is it addressing needs? Looking secondly then in terms of what are the priorities? What are the priorities for the community? As we've alluded to, some of the key themes around early discussions, collaborative discussions, but from your perspective, what are the priorities that really need to be reflected in this reflection paper? And then ultimately understanding the impact and the implication of this reflection paper and how you anticipate that it may help to move things forward within your own organization or move the needle across a more global perspective. So that's what we're hoping to do in terms of the input that we will encourage the dialogue and the conversation. The insights that we gather through these breakout rooms, which we will move to in just a minute, is really going to help to provide some insights as we collate and collaborate a PFMD community response to this open consultation. And so very much your insights will play a key role. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It looks like it's just our group. But let's see if the other groups are
We must
coming.
be the fast movers.
That's right. We're efficient. I see we're with Matt here, who is the mastermind, I think, behind all of this. So he's probably pulling in the other groups at this point now, too.
Yeah, I think it is because people had to click to get out of the room, right?
So you'll let me know when they finish. So
So we just wait a moment. We're in the process. While we're waiting, any final thoughts or
I was going to
reflections?
say, anything you
Yeah.
really think is relevant given the conversation that we've just had that you want pulled through in the key learnings? If you had to say, this is what's really most important. Oh, Holger, I think you're on mute.
thank you. Yeah, I'm missing a little bit. Okay, what will the EMA? What are their next steps?
Mm.
Right. So this is a little bit what I think is missing in the paper.
Mm. Yeah. So now we've got everybody joining back again. Slowly but surely. We've got a few breakout groups still coming back here. Fabulous. I'll just give it another 20 seconds or so, make sure that we can just have some concluding remarks. Oh, it's so lovely to see everybody's faces. This is amazing. It's so nice to see familiar faces, but new faces too. So I hope you've all really enjoyed this conversation and this discussion. Excuse me. I see Nicole, Rebecca, and I'm just checking that Rosa's back with us as well too.
I am
don't-
Haley, just
Oh,
that
there you
my
are.
video was not working earlier. We could see the background, but not my face, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you can
Ah,
see me
dear.
now.
Okay, so yes, we've got everybody back now, I think, for the most part. I hope you enjoyed your discussions. If it wasn't already mentioned, the group map will remain open. So depending on how far you were able to progress with the conversations, please feel free to take till the end of the week, maybe into Monday, to add some of your comments, reflections. It will be left open. And as I mentioned, we will consolidate all of this and bring it forward into the PFMD community response to the PED reflection paper. Before we sign out, I just want to check in with our panelists. Perhaps, Nicole, I can start with you, then Rebecca and Rosa, I'll give you the last word in terms of key learnings, key insights. What was something surprising that came out of the discussion that you had today? Nicole.
I think the last point that just before we came back to the main plenary from Barry, which is at the moment, I'm not 100% sure about this, but the EMA and I know for the MHRA, it's not mandatory to have patient engagement and patient experience data as part of the submission. And the issue with that, and I think there's some back and forth conversations we've had on this, Haley, before, is that until it's mandatory or compulsory, the push from industry may not be there to produce high quality patient experience data if it's not a requirement. It's obviously, it makes business sense, but it's not a requirement. So that's something that needs to be looked at, maybe the EMA and the MHRA and other regulators across the world. So that's a quick point.
Fabulous. Thanks, Nicole. Rebecca, how about you?
I just think we had a good discussion and dialogue around the importance of recognizing that patient experience and the inclusion of patient experience is an umbrella that goes throughout the process, right? It's not patient experience as a particular set, and understanding what good looks like as a part of the process so that we ensure that that engagement is holistic and interpretable and meets, standards and expectations to engage in advance regulatory discussions.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Rosa.
Yeah, I would like to highlight that it was a very relevant discussion, of course, on really what is patient engagement, how we define. Also, I think for me today has been critical what is patient experience data as such. And these are reflections we've been having and discussing with our experts throughout the preparation of the reflection paper. So I can see there will be comments and more input coming on this. And then, of course, I want to mention about the global development aspect. So I ask participants in the group to please, if they spot any major discrepancy with our definitions with regard, for example, with FDA or other global regulators, to highlight this also as part of the consultation. And finally, just quickly to respond to this comment on the whether patient experience data are mandated by EU legislation. They're not. So, this is not something that EMA would decide. It's more the Commission, the Parliament, who would be involved in the legislative process. And to our knowledge, that is not under discussion now. So, yeah, I mean, I acknowledge the point and take it, but yeah, it's not something that EMA can, make something legally mandated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you to our panelists, to Rosa, to Nicole, to Rebecca, and to all of you for contributing and participating to a really important discussion today. It's been fabulous to hear your perspectives on patient engagement and patient experience data. Progress has been made, but there's still lots to do. And if you would like to be further involved and engaged with the conversation, with the work of PFMD, or perhaps of the work of PEPs, please don't hesitate to reach out. We look forward to continuing the conversation and sharing with you the insights and the feedback that we received through this process as well too. One very quick, let's take a quick screenshot. So everybody on 3, and Aurora, I'm teeing you up here. If you can take a quick screenshot, that would be fabulous. On 3, 2, 1, and we smile. And then with that, I turn things over to Clem just to close things out and to thank everybody once again.
Thank you, Hayley. We promise we'll let you go. Just one last thing. So first, we'll be sharing now exactly a quick poll to know on a scale from 1 to 10. How likely are you to recommend this session? So your feedback is very much appreciated and valuable to improve the future session. One last quick information. The last session of the year, PEOF Virtual session of the year, will be happening on November 26th. It will be organized by the Guide MRD project, focusing on the future of cancer care. And then we'll have a lot more session that will be coming in 2026. So thank you so much for joining us today, and have a good evening, rest of your day, depending on where you are.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.